In the coming days, we will convert abandoned subway tunnels into sealed aquifer access chambers, train volunteer divers to inspect submerged intake valves and clear blockages, establish mobile purification units that can be towed between nodes, dunun barges, reinforce key buildings with sandbags and patch collapsed walls with composite sheet barriers, identify higher ground, old hilltop parks, cemetery lawns, rail embankments, and map safe routes for mass migration. Deploy hydroponic rigs powered by salvaged solar panels, using brackish water filtered through charcoal and bamboo. Introduce salt-tolerant plant species, quinoa, salicornia, certain legumes, to test soil regeneration in raised beds. Rotate broadcast schedules to conserve fuel, ensuring each outpost receives daily bulletins. Train local relay teams on shortwave and semaphore signaling, low-tech options that require no power. Reach out to inland survivor groups, farm collectives, former emergency services, isolated research stations, for trade agreements, water. For medicine, maps for fuel. Offer protection packs, armed Tide Watcher escorts in exchange for sharing resources and knowledge. This blueprint is rife with uncertainty. Supplies are finite, and trust is a currency in short supply. But without such planning, we cede our fate to chance. I glance at the photograph of my daughter, Isla, taped beside the microphone. Her small hand is pressed against the glass, reaching for the seagulls she once chased along sunny dunes. I feel the old ache, guilt, sorrow, the mourning that never fades, but beneath it a steadfast resolve. My husband's compass rests beside the photo, its needle still quivering toward home. Only home has changed. Now it is wherever survivors gather under a shared sky, wherever water flows and words connect. Every time I turn this mic on, I pilot that compass, pointing towards solidarity rather than solitude. Tonight, I reflect on choices made and roads taken. I could have prioritized my own safety, retreated to the highest spire, and broadcast from behind reinforced walls. Instead, I waded into floodwaters, faced collapsing ceilings, and risked everything to keep the pumps running. The decision nearly cost me my life, but it saved hundreds. In this crucible, I learned that leadership is not born from titles or grand gestures, but from the willingness to stand between danger and those we serve. It's in the grit of refusal to look away, in the words we choose when the static threatens to swallow us whole. I clear my throat and adjust the mic. The gears of the hybrid generator churn at my feet, its steady hum a reminder that progress is possible, however incremental. I begin to speak, voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. This is Echo signing off for the night. The cistern flows still, though not forever. We have water, we have shelter, and we have each other. The road ahead is long and the storms have not ceased. But every sunrise brings us another chance to defend the spark of hope we carry. Plant a seed, share a story, guard that lantern from the night wind. Do not let despair claim you. For as long as we breathe, there is the possibility of renewal. We survive not just to endure, but to flourish. Rest if you must, recover when you can. But tomorrow, pedal the generator again. Turn the valve, raise the flare, speak into the night. Stay alive, stay human. I switch off the microphone and the room falls into low-lit quiet. Survivors file past the studio on their way to sleeping quarters. Some heading to hammocks rigged in conference rooms, others to bunks carved from broken pews. Outside, the wind still carries the scent of brine and ash. The tidal pools glimmer. In the moonlight, as if mirrors catching a glimpse of a future that may yet be shaped by human hands. I step to the window and look out over the battered city. The sea's surface lies calm, a deceptive glass that hides the power slumbering beneath. I close my eyes and breathe in the night, and I whisper, half to myself, half to the world. Good night, survivors. Tomorrow we continue. No finality lies in those words. Only the promise of another day's struggle, another day's small victories, another day's fragile hope. In the silence that follows, I carry them with me into the dark, ready to face whatever comes next. Because this is not the end. It is simply conclusion of one chapter in our ongoing story of resilience, and the beginning of the next. The weight of loss is a constant anchor around my ribs. At night, when the wind howls and the generator dies, I stare at the empty chair beside the mic and imagine Isla turning the pages of her picture book. I clutch a singed photograph of my family smiling on a beach that no longer exists, and whisper pieces of her lullabies until I fall asleep. I'm haunted by decisions that cannot be undone. Should I have stayed with the research vessel instead of heading to shore? Could I have shielded my husband from the rising waters? Survivor's guilt is a living thing. It feeds on your regrets. It demands a sacrifice at every turn. Yet it also reminds me of what we lost, and what we still fight to regain. Through loss, I learned to adapt. I reprogrammed an old satellite dish to amplify our signal, widening our network. I taught myself to brew seaweed tea, rich in nutrients, so no one here goes weak from starvation. I patched torn sails into rain catchment sheets and rigged them across our roof. I train young survivors in tide forecasting, teaching them to read barometers like runes. My voice cracks sometimes. There are nights when the memory of Isla's voice calling Mama echoes so loud it drowns out the generator's hum. But I've never stopped signing on, because every time I speak, I reclaim a piece of humanity from the flood. Every time I pedal this rig, I resist the pull of despair. I remember what the world felt like before, when beaches were warm under bare feet, when rivers ran fresh, when rain meant life, not ruin. I remember lullabies beside my daughter's bed, the taste of salt air before it grew sour, the hum of city traffic instead of the hiss of distant thunder. Those memories are fragile, like glass, but I hold on to them so I'll never forget what we're fighting for. Now, as I sit here behind the mic, I open my eyes to a world half submerged and half burned. Yet I feel a flame within me that won't die. It is hope, or perhaps stubbornness. I have nothing left but this voice and this ragged band of listeners. But in that connection, I sense the promise of something more. Solidarity, compassion, maybe, just maybe, survival. So I lean close to this microphone and speak again. This is Echo. Live tides at 2.3 meters and rising. Winds shifting south at 18 knots. If you're headed north, steer clear of the submerged viaduct. And to those in Havenport, congratulations on repairing your rain catchment. Keep that water flowing. We're in this together. Out here, every voice matters. Every life matters. Stay alive. And as the static swirls around my words, I know that somewhere, maybe hundreds of miles away, someone hears me. And in that breath of recognition, I find the strength to pedal on. I tap the microphone nervously, watching the radar loop on my salvaged tablet. A towering swell, stretching from the Pacific Rim to our shores, grows by the minute. They estimate its height, 60 meters at least, once it hits the continental shelf, but those numbers feel meaningless when you're 50 floors up in a half-submerged broadcast tower. This is no ordinary storm. This is the Megatsunami, born of a massive submarine landslide off the Aleutian Trench, now racing toward us at jetliner speeds. Every day, survival has gotten harder. 3 months ago, our cisterns brimmed with rainwater harvested during the monsoon. Now, daily rainfall has dwindled to dust. Salt crystals coat the gutters. Moisture simply evaporates before it hits the barrels. The generator sputters on dwindling. Diesel. Each extra minute we broadcast is a minute we deny ourselves light, warmth, and the crucial ability to pump what little water remains. Food stocks are down to canned legumes, beans, chickpeas, and lentils, and a handful of freeze-dried vegetables scavenged from a half-sunken grocery store. Every can is rationed, every spoonful measured. First, the air turned to fire. Global temperatures spiked by 2.7 degrees over pre-industrial levels. By 2035, heat waves scorched even the northern boreal forests into ash. Wildfires swept across continents with unprecedented ferocity, laying waste to ecosystems and reducing fertile lands to sterile cinder. When the monsoons failed, drought cracked. Riverbeds into labyrinths of desolation. Croplands withered. Aquifers dropped below the depths farmers could pump. Then the seas rose and didn't stop. Thermal expansion and melting ice sheets added more than half a meter of sea level, swallowing coastal lands inch by merciless inch. Barrier islands and marshes that once buffered storms vanished, leaving inland areas exposed. Each tidal surge carried brackish water farther upstream, infiltrating wells and poisoning fresh aquifers. And now the Megatsunami looms. A 200 million ton slide of sediment off the Aleutian Ridge displaced water in one colossal pulse. That pulse has become a wave train, spaced 5 minutes apart, spanning the width of the ocean. As the wave reaches the continental shelf, it will slow, but grow in height, stacking into a wall of water capable of sweeping entire city blocks away in a single sweep. Attacks by raiders have intensified. They know desperation breeds vulnerability. Convoys carrying water now travel only under escort, and even then they route through narrow channels, hoping to avoid the patrolling speedboats of the Iron Brigade. Out at sea, fishermen once brought in daily catches of shellfish. Now the fisheries are dead zones, hypoxic dead pockets created by nutrient runoffs and stratified water layers have spread, suffocating fish and crabs alike. Coastal settlements turned into graveyards, schools hollowed out, church steeples submerged, entire neighborhoods reduced to driftwood and debris. Inland, failed crops forced farmers to uproot fruit trees and burn them for fuel. When even that ran out, they burned furniture. Wood that once built homes is now smoldering ashes on the horizon, communication lines frayed. Satellites, battered by solar flares and lacking maintenance, flicker out of position. Fiber lines snapped by rising earth and shifting sea channels. Yesterday's message from Havenport never arrived. A plea for help that vanished into the void. This fractured network, a single functional radio tower like mine, is a linchpin. Lose it and weeks' worth of coordinated convoys could collapse into chaos. We survive on a 1.5 L-day ration per person. Breathing, cooking, cleaning. Every drop is precious. I recommend the ash filtration method. Collect ash from burned driftwood, pack it into a sieve, and pour salt water through it. The charred cellulose absorbs some salt ions, enough to safely hydrate if you follow up with a ceramic filter, or boil the water for 10 minutes. Foraging yields seaweed, rich in iodine and fiber, and shellfish, protein, but only at low tide, and only if you can outrun pirates. Home hydroponic rigs exist in a few sheltered courtyards, but they require electricity and clean water, both in painfully short supply. Diesel is down to our last 25L. Each liter powers the generator for roughly 2 hours. I run in short bursts, critical bulletins, weather updates, emergency flares. The rest of the time, we rely on battery-powered lanterns and solar-charged USB banks, though the panels degrade under constant ashfall. Brighton Towers is breached at the 15th floor. Seawater seeps in with each high tide. We've plugged holes with plastic sheeting and salvage foam, but cracks widen daily. Soon we'll have to retreat even higher, if that's possible. A tsunami isn't just one wave. It's a series of oscillations. When the seabed suddenly uplifts or subsides, water columns shift, sending energy in all directions. In deep water, these waves travel fast, up to 800 km/h, but are barely noticeable, just half a meter high. As they approach shallow coastal slopes, the wave's base drags on the seafloor, compressing energy and forcing the wave to rise catastrophically. According to our tidal sensors offshore, the first crest should arrive within 12 hours. Lower barometric pressure, down to 970 HPA in the last reading, signals the trough accelerating toward us. Expect an initial drawdown. The shoreline will recede 100 meters or more within minutes. That's your warning to evacuate. Move, uphill, no exceptions. Even a 5-meter elevation can reduce wave height dramatically. Memorize too. The east stairwell to the old railway embankment, 30 menors elevation, and the west ramp to the hillside orchards, 25 menors. Coordinate with local tide watchers to have flares at junction points. Leave water barrels at the evacuation staging areas, wrapped in plastic and weighted down to prevent washout. Mark them with reflective tape. 3 short flares. Wave drawdown. Begun. 1 long flare. Wave crest approaching. Silence afterward. Take cover. Use sandbags. Fill from the courtyard pits to build temporary flood barriers at breached corridors. Stack them at least 4 bags high. Cover gaps with tarps and duct tape. Delegate broadcast times. Each node gets a 15-minute window to send reports. Outside those windows, generators stay off. Share schedules with all survivors. I can't look at the horizon without flinching. Every swell makes me think of the family I lost to these very waters. Yet if I don't speak, people will wander into the drawdown blind, only to be swallowed by that sudden vacuum of water. I think of Isabel in Havenport, 12 years old, learning to rig her first sail out of salvaged canvas. She's waiting for my bulletin, trusting me to guide her to safety. We have less than half a day before the coastline convulses. The generator sputters ominously. I tap its casing, willing it to last. Supplies are thinning and morale, already a fragile thread, quavers on the edge of despair. This megatsunami isn't an abstract threat. It's a living force, hungry for destruction. It doesn't negotiate or pause for hope. It only advances. So I take a deep breath, steady my voice, and begin the live briefing. This is Echo on station K11. Megatsunami crest expected in 12 hours at 3924 degree N, 74.72 degree W. Immediate evacuation recommended to elevations above 20 meters. Follow. The east stairwell to the railway embankment, or the west ramp to the orchards. Activate signal protocol at the first sign of drawdown. Secure water caches and sandbag breaches. Solar nodes to conserve power. Generators off except for scheduled broadcasts. Repeat, 12 hours to impact. Your life depends on swift action. This is not a drill. Stay vigilant. Stay alive. The microphone crackles. The tablet screen dims and the generator pauses in its wheeze. Silence, an almost sacred pause, fills the room. Outside, the wind gusts, as if the sea itself answers in agreement. In 12 hours, everything will change. And between now and then, we will fight every moment for our survival. I wake before dawn, the sky a bruise of violet light leaking over the horizon. The generator's gone silent. Last night's broadcast was its funeral dirge. I fumble along the wet corridor, lighting lanterns charged by scrounged solar cells, and brace myself for a day of improvisation. We're down to 3 days' worth of water. 3 days until the cisterns run dry and every tongue cracks like old clay. The rain catchment I rigged with torn sails and tarps hasn't delivered a single drop in weeks. Each morning I climb to the rooftop and scan the sky for clouds, but only a relentless blue stretches above. No mercy in its promise. Food, too, has dwindled. 1 can of beans each per day, half a fistful of seaweed for flavor and nutrients. I ration spices now, salt, crushed peppercorns, reminders of a world that once celebrated taste. I lace up rubber boots and descend to the 15th floor, wading through knee-deep salt water that oozes through the walls. In the makeshift storeroom, I count out rations into paper bags, marking each with a black X. Today's bag, 1 can of beans, 2 strips of kelp, 1 measured scoop of powdered algae. Tomorrow's, the same. It's not enough, but it's all we have. At noon, the radio crackles with a distress call. 3 skiffs ambushed eastbound convoy near the subway overpass. The Iron Brigade strikes again, black-clad figures armed with rusty rifles, boarding every boat that drifts into view. I replay their message over the airwaves, warning other outposts to avoid the overpass at coordinates 3927 again, 74 Plavsouv de Gerdiav. But toothless warnings against bullets feel worthless. I press my palm against the microphone, voice low. Evacuation route Bravo is compromised. Alternative path. Head inland 2 kilometers, past the old textile mill. There's a hidden inlet, shallow, but navigable at high tide. My heart pounds as I broadcast. I can't bear the thought of losing more people because I was too timid to speak late afternoon. I venture beyond Brighton Towers to check on our water caches at the railway embankment. The path is slick with algae and littered with driftwood. A rusted rail car lies overturned, its wheels still half submerged. I slip inside and find 3 empty barrels, stolen or washed away. Angry footsteps crunch behind me. A woman emerges from the gloom, rifle trained at my chest. Her eyes are hard, dark circles etched by sleepless nights. I hold up my hands, voice steady. Echo Station K11, I'm not the enemy. She hesitates, barrel trembling. Then she lowers the rifle and steps closer. Echo, she repeats, awe threading through exhaustion. Is it really you? She introduces herself. Mara, leader of a small band called the Salt Hawks. They've been scavenging nearby towns, trading sewn-together maps for canned goods. They know my broadcasts, rely on them like lifelines. But they've been forced to move inland. Brighton Towers is too exposed, too easy a target. They need fuel, water, medicine. In return, they offer a deal. They've heard rumors of an underground cistern beneath the old city hall, still pumping spring water through. Corroded pipes. I should be skeptical. Every rumor carries the stink of false hope. But I think of Isla's bright eyes when she learned that water comes from the land. And I feel that flicker of possibility. Night falls and the wind picks up, carrying salt spray that bites at exposed skin. Forecasts, once so precise, are now rough guesses. The barometer on my tablet spikes, then plunges. A schizophrenic pulse that foretells nothing good. I sense a storm brewing. Thunderheads marching inland, dark as sewage. I broadcast a warning. All nodes, secure equipment and shelter. High winds and torrential rains expected within 6 hours. Move to reinforced zones. Stairwell B and the 4th floor safe room. Lightning cracks overhead, followed by a clap so loud it vibrates through my bones. The generator splutters back to life for one last gasp. I keep it running, broadcasting static and warnings, until the wires spark and die. Mara's offer weighs me. An abandoned cistern could mean salvation for dozens, or a death trap if the pipes have collapsed or the water's contaminated. I consult my notes. Spring water should register near 0 salinity, phosphates low. Sea intrusion would spike sodium chloride to dangerous levels. I lack the equipment to test. My life's work, marine biology, taught me to value data over hope. But here, data is scarce, and hope is a currency we're nearly bankrupt in. I decide, to meet her, risking raider attack and storm surge, to inspect the cistern myself. Better to know the truth and fail than to cling blindly to a fantasy. By dawn, the storm has arrived. Sheets of rain lash the tower, windows rattling like gunfire. I don waterproof layers and hoist lanterns through the flooded corridors. The Salt Hawks wait below in their patched skiffs. Mara greets me, eyes cautious but grateful. The journey to City Hall is treacherous. The flooded lower town is a maze of submerged cars. Only rooftops and streetlights break the surface. We navigate by dead reckoning and my recorded coordinates. Each wave threatening to swamp our flimsy craft. Twice we dodge raider speedboats, their megaphones blaring threats. Each evasion saps more strength from the engine, and our nerved City Hall stands half underwater, its stone facade bleached and cracking. We climb a ruined stairwell, chest-high water sloshing around our waists. On the 3rd floor, we find the pipe access hatch, rusted shut. Mara hands me a crowbar. I pry it open with a grunt. Below, darkness. I drop a weighted line, counting 20 feet before I feel wet rope. We lower a lantern. Its glow reveals a vaulted chamber, water pooling. On the flagstone floor, moss carpets half the walls. Faint drips echo. The pipes overhead spurt droplets, slow, rhythmic. The air is cold, musty. I lean over the ledge, lowering a stolen lab beaker into the pool. It fills with clear liquid that smells faintly of limestone. My fingers tremble as I raise it to my lips, just a sip to taste. Sweet, cool, no sting of salt. I exhale, relief flooding me. It's real. As I mark the location in my notebook, Mara points to faded graffiti, an arrow and the words Motherwell scrawled across a support beam. She's convinced Motherwell is another outpost, maybe deeper aquifers feeding this cistern. If we can trace those, we might find a network of clean springs, enough to supply every survivor node for weeks, maybe months. But Motherwell is a ghost. No broadcast calls from there, no signals on the shortwave. Some say it was a research facility for climate-engineered springs. Others claim it's just a myth born of desperation. Yet this cistern's flow suggests a larger source. I press, the beaker to the light, watching sediment swirl in the amber glow. A single drop of hope can spread like ripples across a stagnant pond, or fizzle away on the surface. Which will it be? Back at Brighton Towers, I sit by the dying generator and hold the beaker in my hands. The taste of fresh water lingers on my tongue. My mind races. Should we risk a full-scale expedition to Motherwell? If it's too far, we'll lose more lives than we save. If it's a trap, poisoned or collapsed, we'll never return. A memory surfaces. Isla chasing seagulls on the dunes, squealing as they flapped overhead. I promised her I would protect her, keep her dry, keep her safe. I failed her. But I still have a chance to protect others. This cistern is more than water. It's redemption. The storm finally breaks. In the fragile calm, I broadcast the discovery, coordinates, and the grant of permission. This is Echo, freshwater cistern located beneath the old city hall at 39.26 degrees N, 74.76 W. Flow rate estimated at 50 liters per hour. I authorize a limited-sized team to secure and stabilize the site. More details to follow. Remember, share this information only within trusted nodes. Raiders will swarm on any leak. Hands shake as I shut off the mic. The truth is out. Salvation or disaster. There's no turning back now. Within hours, teams arrive. Tide Watchers, Salthawks, and independent survivors converging on the hall. Fuel trucks line up on the flooded avenue, their headlights bobbing through sheets of rain. I stand on the embankment, heart thudding like machinery, as armed. Lookouts scan the water for threats. I see hope in their faces and fear. Each person carries a shard of their own past. Mothers clutching children, old men with canes, former soldiers whose uniforms are now rags. We share the same need, water. But water can unite, or ignite every latent greed and desperation. As the first pump rig is lowered into the cistern's depths, the storm's final gusts shriek through broken windows. Waves crash against the building's foundations, reminding us of the looming tsunami yet to come. We've traded one crisis for another. The wave will arrive, but for a precious few hours, we hold a reprieve. And in that reprieve, tension crackles in the air like live wires. Will the pumps hold? Will the pipes burst? Will raiders descend once they catch wind of our prize? Or will Motherwell's myth be our lifeline, extending beyond this battered hall into a future we dare not yet imagine? I press my hand to the cold metal railing, steadying my breath. The tide is high, the storm subsided, but the world's worst is on its way. And in that volatile lull we must act, because hope, like water, pours away unless it is caught and carefully channeled. Tomorrow we find out whether this cistern is a miracle or a curse. Tonight we fight exhaustion and doubt, clinging to each other and to the fragile promise of survival. And in the darkness, I whisper into the wind, stay alive, keep moving. We're just getting started. I hear it before I see it, a distant rolling thunder that doesn't belong to any storm. The sea is speaking in its deadliest tongue. I'm perched on the 9th floor of City Hall, thigh-deep in frigid pool water around the newly installed pump array, when the first tremor shivers beneath my feet. I taste salt on my lips and fear in my throat. The cistern has been humming like a lifeline all night, water rising through the pipes at 25 liters per hour, flowing into barrels we hauled up from the flooded streets. Survivors wheel them into storage rooms by the dozen. For nearly 20 hours, we've watched the gauges climb, 5 barrels, 10, 15. Enough to quench a village's thirst for days. Enough, perhaps, to last until the Megatsunami touches land and we can coordinate a mass evacuation. But now, everything fractures. A second tremor shakes the pump scaffolding. Metal groans under the stress. One of the hoses snaps loose, lashing. Water across the chamber like a whip. I sprint through the waist-high water toward the control console. Heart hammering, wrench in hand. Sparks flash as wires arc. Pressure builds against a valve, whistling like a wounded animal. I clamp the wrench onto the valve wheel and torque with every ounce of strength I have, until it cracks and flies from my grip, spinning across the tile. A roar follows, louder than any gale or gunshot. The floor tilts, and I lurch sideways, bracing against a column. Water sloshes overhead now, pouring through cracks in the ceiling, as if the cistern itself is surrendering to the quake. My boots slip. I fall hard, gulping in icy water that cuts through the thin fabric of my coveralls. Panic claws at my chest. Above me, a slab of concrete groans, then shears away from the ceiling. Dust and debris rain down, obscuring the lantern's glow. I scramble to my feet, coughing, hands slick. In the murk, I see two choices. If I can close that valve and reattach the hose, we might save this cistern for thousands. But the structure is unstable. Another tremor could bury us alive in this chamber. And if I stay down here too long, the wave could strike before I return to the surface, trapping me beneath ruins. The signal panel is 10 meters away. Dry corridor or no. Activating our flares would warn every outpost to abandon the city and to seek higher ground immediately. But doing so would cut off the pump power circuit. The cistern would go silent. All hope of fresh water here would vanish. Time fractures. My pulse pounds in my ears. Above, the ground groans again, closer, deeper, more violent. The first crest of the tsunami will follow the quake in minutes. Every second counts. I clutch the wrench and sprint for the panel, kicking through the water. Each step sends ripples toward the pumps, threatening to flood the electronics. I wrench open the panel's hatch and let my shaking fingers find the flare switch. My heart feels like a captive bird, wings beating against my ribs. "This is Echo," I shout into my throat, but the chamber swallows my voice. I flip the switch. Outside, flares erupt into the sky. 3 blasts in quick succession, the universal signal of imminent danger. The survivors above will see. Will no evacuate now. At that moment, the world tilts again. I stumble back, trying to press my shoulder against the hatch, but the water surges in, shorting the circuits. Sparks pop, then the panel goes dark. No hiss of pressurized valves. No distant hum of motors drawing water from the cistern. Silence. A horrified quiet, as if the building itself is holding its breath. A blast of water rushes in from a newly opened crack. It crashes against me like a battering wave, knocking me off balance. I go under, lungs screaming. I kick upward through the swirling debris, chunks of pipe, jagged rebar, shards of ceramic tile. My hand finds the beam of a fallen support strut. I clamp onto it and haul myself back to the surface. Gasping, I pull myself into a pocket of air beneath a collapsed archway. The lantern's dim glow reveals a widening fissure along the wall, blackness beyond. I can't see the pumps, but I can hear them. A low, dying whir, then nothing. The cistern is going silent. The life of every outpost that depended on this water is at stake. Shock bleeds into determination. I kick free of the strut and wade back to the console. Each step is agony. The tile bulges under the tremors, cutting into my shins. My hands find the valve wheel's jagged edge, cold, slick, and half-buried. I wrap my fingers around it and twist with everything left in me. Rust falls away in flakes. Metal grinds. But the valve turns. Water hisses, gushing into the hose coupling. I push the hose back onto the barb and cinch the clamp. Fingers raw and bleeding. A thunderous rumble shakes the chamber one last time. The ceiling above caves in, sending another slab crashing into the pumps. I dive sideways, wrench still in hand, narrowly avoiding a lethal blow. In the haze of dust, I hear the motor revive. A shudder, a cough, then the reassuring hum of water returning. The hose fills instantly, pressure hissing through the coupling. Then gentler, steadier. Victory tastes like blood and salt on my tongue, but there's no time to savor it. I splash back toward the hatch, heart drumming in terror. The fissure has widened. Water surges in waves 3 feet high. If I don't get out now, I'll be trapped. Above, the flares pulse faintly through debris-clogged windows, a ghostly beacon. I haul myself from the chamber into the corridor. The water pins me to one side as dust chokes the air. I press my back against the wall and inch forward, following mounting flares of light from the entry stairwell. Each step is a battle against the tide. At the top of the landing, the stairwell, door is buckled under pressure. Brace my shoulder and heave it open as the tsunami's first walls of water crash into the building. The roar is deafening. My ears ring as I stagger onto the roof of the stairwell, water swirling around my waist. I look north. A wall of milk white foam, 10 stories high, trailing curling fingers of debris. Cars, timbers, broken furniture, whole trees. It moves faster than any creature on Earth. My breath catches. My heart halts. And then instinct lashes through me. Wrench in hand, I sprint toward the adjacent stair tower, the only structure tall enough to clear the crest. The water drags at my knees, but I force each step, adrenaline searing through every muscle. Behind me, the wave looms, a living avalanche of destruction. I reach the next door, unlatch it, and stumble into the stairwell, chest heaving, lungs burning. In one fluid motion, I ascend 1, 2, 3 flights, each step a climb through exhaustion. Outside the stairwell's highest window, the sky is an apocalyptic canvas of foam and shadow. Then I break through onto the rooftop. I'm above the wave's peak, just barely. Beneath me, water surges through streets, ripping away streetlights, uprooting what little vegetation remains. The world tilts into chaos. I feel weightless, suspended between terror and triumph. I lift the wrench overhead, shouting into the roaring wind. We survived! My voice is lost, but the feeling carries itself. In the battered shingles and the draped tarps that served as makeshift shelters. In the blinking eyes of survivors pressed against windows. In the battered but functioning pump arrays far below. We beat back oblivion, if only for a moment. I lean on the rooftop's railing, chest heaving, tears mingling with rain. Behind me, the battered shell of City Hall groans under the strain of the wave. Ahead, dawn breaks through gunmetal clouds, painting the world in bruised purples and pale gold. The storm has passed. The sea's fury has spent itself. And in that sunrise, I understand. Survival isn't a single moment of victory. It's every wrench thrown, every valve turned, every flare fired into the dark. It's the decision to act when every instinct screams to run. It's the choice to face the wave instead of letting it sweep you away. I press my palm to the rooftops, cold edge, and close my eyes, breathing in the salt-laden air. For the first time in months, I feel something more than fear. A surge of fierce, unshakable resolve. We've turned the tide tonight. But the future will demand more of us than any one person can give. I'll answer that demand. I have to. Because hope is not a destination. It's the horizon we chase, no matter how far the sea stretches. The dawn that follows the wave's fury is eerily calm. I step onto the rooftop of the taller stair tower, the salt-choked wind reduced to occasional gusts. Before me lies a world rearranged. Streets turned into rivers of debris, building facades peeled away like bark, abandoned vehicles floating like grotesque driftwood. Yet beneath the desolation, there is motion, tentative, determined. Survivors drift through the wreckage, hauling fresh water barrels, tending to the injured, salvaging supplies. The pumps we fought to save are still running, trickling life into barrels and buckets. Because I chose to secure the pump instead of solely sounding the alarm, the cistern continues to flow at its modest rate. It won't refill our entire network overnight, but it will sustain the outposts that heed our evacuation warnings. By sunlight, 200 barrels have been distributed to the Tide Watchers, the Salt Hawks, and independent survivors camped on higher ground. Teams of small boats, worked by oar and patch job motors, ferry water back to shelters beyond reach. Of the flood. The evacuation itself unfolded chaotically but effectively. Thanks to the flares I triggered, every node within 30 kilometers got the signal. 3 short blasts. Outposts mobilized, prioritizing women, children, and the wounded. No mass panic ensued, an achievement in itself. Instead, a grim resolve took hold. We would rise above the wave's destruction, piece by piece, life by life. Our coordinated efforts saved dozens of lives that early morning. I watch from above as survivors dismantle what remains of the flooded streets, dragging planks and twisted metal to shore up temporary levees. They're guided by the same hope that beats within me, that we can survive this, and perhaps even build something new from the ruins. Yet the scale of destruction is too great to ignore. The ruined city hall, half submerged and cracked, stands as a monument to our vulnerability. There is no grand reset, no miraculous restoration. The world doesn't right itself because one wave has passed. Instead, there are incremental acts of defiance. A boarded window here, a patched pipeline there, a mess hall organized beneath a collapsed freeway overpass. These small triumphs add up to a fragile mosaic of resilience. I feel the weight of every life saved, and every one that couldn't be reached in time. Guilt still claws at my chest as I recall the families who lingered too close to the drawdown, who heard the warning but lacked the strength to climb. Yet I also feel pride in what our ragged coalition achieved. In the static of my mind, Isla's laughter echoes, mingled with the shouts of survivors greeting the rainwater barrels. Her voice and theirs merge into a single, persistent call to carry on. Gone is the woman who trembled at every swell and quake. The wreckage we've endured has carved new contours into my spirit, harder edges where once there were soft memories. But inside those contours glows a fiercer resolve. I am no longer just Echo, the voice in the static. I am Echo, the spark that ignited action. I carried our collective will through the quake and the wave. I will carry it forward. By mid-morning, I descend from the rooftop, wrench in hand, to join teams reinforcing sandbag barriers along the most vulnerable corridors. Mara's Salthawks are already at work, their rifles leaned against a broken lamppost. They nod in greeting and pass. Outwarm broth, chicken substitute made from scavenged powder and rehydrated seaweed. We share a quiet moment, passing barrels between us. Wordless acknowledgement of trust forged in crisis. Across the makeshift plaza in front of City Hall, musicians play a shanty on battered guitars and tin cans turned drums. Children, faces smeared. With mud and sea salt, clap along. For a heartbeat, the world feels normal. The rhythm of human connection, the pulse of shared creativity. Even as we rebuild, we celebrate life. The sea has retreated, leaving behind a sticky carpet of brine and silt. Marsh grasses that once filtered tides lie flattened, their roots exposed. Mangrove saplings, planted in a short-lived restoration project, have been torn from the mud. Anywhere the wave's lip struck, it gouged channels that won't refill, without deliberate effort. Yet nature's resilience asserts itself too. In low-lying pools, cranes and herons stalk the mudflats at dawn, probing for small fish disoriented by the surge. Crabs emerge from broken shells to scuttle across exposed sandbars. Microbial blooms, signs of life, dot the stagnant waterways, hinting that the cycle of regeneration may begin if given a chance. Ours is the task of stewarding that chance. Engineers and researchers among the survivors, former technicians from the marine lab where I worked, begin taking water samples to assess turbidity, salinity gradients, and nutrient loads. Their findings will inform where to replant marsh, grasses, how to stabilize shorelines, and what fish species to reintroduce to support food security. In the quiet hours late at night, I retreat to a corner of the shattered conference room, my old broadcast studio, to sift through recordings. Each message we sent, each response we received is archived on battered drives. I play them back one by one, the terrified pleas, the hopeful declarations, the tactical coordination. Listening, I recognize something profound. Our voices, when joined, become more powerful than any wave. We shape survival with our words and deeds. I sit in the lamplight, clutching the photograph of my family, and allow myself a rare moment of grief. I speak softly into the empty mic. I miss you both. But because of what happened here today, your memory will live on in the water we save, the lives we protect, and the hope we refuse to abandon. Tears slip freely now, unashamed. They mingle with drops of purified water I carry in a small flask. Proof that life endures even when it seems most fragile. As the sun sets on the first day after the wave, the survivors gather around fires built in overturned barrels. We share stories of small victories and of losses, of songs and silent prayers. I stand at the edge of the group, microphone in hand, and speak once more. We've survived a quake that shook our bones, a wave that tried to wash us away. We've lost too much to count, but we've found each other in the darkness. Tomorrow we rebuild. We plant new roots, literal and metaphorical, in the broken earth. It won't be easy. The tides will keep pounding. The storms will keep coming, and at any moment the sea may call again. But tonight, let us remember who we are, survivors. And let us remember why we fight. For every breath we draw, for every life we save, for every drop of water that reminds us we're still here. Around me, voices echo in agreement. A low murmur swells into a chant. Names of lost loved ones, names of future children, names whispered into the night like a vow. In that circle of light flanked by shadows and brine-smelling smoke, I realize that falling action is not the end. It is the turning point from which every new story unfolds. We have emerged from the wave's shadow, and though the world remains broken, we carry in our hearts the ember of something unbreakable: community. Tomorrow, I will pedal the generator. Again, re-establish broadcast schedules, and share the water sample data with outposts far beyond these ruins. I will coordinate supply runs, negotiate with raider factions for safe passage, and map safe corridors through still-shifting tides. I will speak Isla's name into the microphone, letting her memory light our way. The tsunami tested us, and we passed. But the true test lies ahead. Rebuilding a world where water flows freely again, where communities can thrive, and where the next generation, children who only know the cracked earth and the roiling sea, can learn to hope without fear. Tonight, though I let myself sit in the quiet triumph of survival, I let the sorrow and the pride wash through me like the tide, and I vow, in the silence before sleep, that we will not squander this second chance, because falling action is only the prelude to what comes next, which I promise you will be one hell of a story. The first light of dawn seeps through the fractured windows of the makeshift command center. It paints the walls a pale, hopeful hue, yet the brilliance is muted by the dust and salt that cling to every surface. I stand before the microphone one last time tonight, knowing that each broadcast may be the final flicker of connection for some listeners, or the steady glow that keeps others pressing onward. Survival never ends. It is a continuous act of will, a day-by-day vow to stand against despair, even when the world seems set on erasing us. Yesterday's victory at the cistern feels both monumental and fleeting. 200 barrels of fresh water distributed, enough to sustain a small community for weeks. Yet we all know that weeks are a heartbeat in this landscape. Tomorrow's rainfall is still a rumor, and once the pumps inevitably sputter out, we'll return to rationing and scavenging. Hope is not a fortress built of stone. It's a single flame dancing atop a gusting wind. We guard it fiercely, sheltering it from every draft but one wrong turn, one miscalculation, one raider attack, one machine failure, and it could be snuffed out. Still, that flame persists. The engineers have rigged a rudimentary solar wind hybrid generator to power the pumps for a few extra hours each day. A group of former school teachers organizes evening classes for the children, teaching them map reading and basic survival skills. They turn corrugated metal and driftwood into makeshift desks, and beneath the flickering lanterns, young faces study tide tables with the same intensity once reserved for algebra. In these small acts, in the rigging of cables and the drawing, of lines on paper, we plant the seeds of tomorrow's world, and perhaps that world will rise from the wreckage, more resilient than the one we lost. We cannot pretend the worst is behind us. The Megatsunami was the apex of one crisis, but the tectonic shifts continue beneath our feet. Aftershocks will rack the coastal shelf, nudging more waves towards submerged cities farther south. The barometric patterns are erratic. Climate models, once reliable, now offer more conjecture than prediction. Our plans must be as fluid as the tides we study. In the coming days, we will convert abandoned subway tunnels into sealed aquifer access chambers, train volunteer divers to inspect submerged intake valves and clear blockages, establish mobile purification units that can be towed between nodes, dunun barges, reinforce key buildings with sandbags and patch collapsed walls with composite sheet barriers, identify higher ground, old hilltop parks, cemetery lawns, rail embankments, and map safe routes for mass migration. Deploy hydroponic rigs powered by salvaged solar panels, using brackish water filtered through charcoal and bamboo. Introduce salt-tolerant plant species, quinoa, salicornia, certain legumes, to test soil regeneration in raised beds. Rotate broadcast schedules to conserve fuel, ensuring each outpost receives daily bulletins. Train local relay teams on shortwave and semaphore signaling, low-tech options that require no power. Reach out to inland survivor groups, farm collectives, former emergency services, isolated research stations, for trade agreements, water. For medicine, maps for fuel. Offer protection packs, armed Tide Watcher escorts in exchange for sharing resources and knowledge. This blueprint is rife with uncertainty. Supplies are finite, and trust is a currency in short supply. But without such planning, we cede our fate to chance. I glance at the photograph of my daughter, Isla, taped beside the microphone. Her small hand is pressed against the glass, reaching for the seagulls she once chased along sunny dunes. I feel the old ache, guilt, sorrow, the mourning that never fades, but beneath it a steadfast resolve. My husband's compass rests beside the photo, its needle still quivering toward home. Only home has changed. Now it is wherever survivors gather under a shared sky, wherever water flows and words connect. Every time I turn this mic on, I pilot that compass, pointing towards solidarity rather than solitude. Tonight, I reflect on choices made and roads taken. I could have prioritized my own safety, retreated to the highest spire, and broadcast from behind reinforced walls. Instead, I waded into floodwaters, faced collapsing ceilings, and risked everything to keep the pumps running. The decision nearly cost me my life, but it saved hundreds. In this crucible, I learned that leadership is not born from titles or grand gestures, but from the willingness to stand between danger and those we serve. It's in the grit of refusal to look away, in the words we choose when the static threatens to swallow us whole. I clear my throat and adjust the mic. The gears of the hybrid generator churn at my feet, its steady hum a reminder that progress is possible, however incremental. I begin to speak, voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. This is Echo signing off for the night. The cistern flows still, though not forever. We have water, we have shelter, and we have each other. The road ahead is long and the storms have not ceased. But every sunrise brings us another chance to defend the spark of hope we carry. Plant a seed, share a story, guard that lantern from the night wind. Do not let despair claim you. For as long as we breathe, there is the possibility of renewal. We survive not just to endure, but to flourish. Rest if you must, recover when you can. But tomorrow, pedal the generator again. Turn the valve, raise the flare, speak into the night. Stay alive, stay human. I switch off the microphone and the room falls into low-lit quiet. Survivors file past the studio on their way to sleeping quarters. Some heading to hammocks rigged in conference rooms, others to bunks carved from broken pews. Outside, the wind still carries the scent of brine and ash. The tidal pools glimmer. In the moonlight, as if mirrors catching a glimpse of a future that may yet be shaped by human hands. I step to the window and look out over the battered city. The sea's surface lies calm, a deceptive glass that hides the power slumbering beneath. I close my eyes and breathe in the night, and I whisper, half to myself, half to the world, "Good night, survivors. Tomorrow we continue." No finality lies in those words, only the promise of another day's struggle, another day's small victories, another day's fragile hope. In the silence that follows, I carry them with me into the dark, ready to face whatever comes next. Because this is not the end. It is simply conclusion of one chapter in our ongoing story of resilience, and the beginning of the next.